way of a confrontation. You know, Desmond, Chris has been talking about this for the past several minutes now, the fact that we're coming up on this very early curfew in Santa Monica, one of the earliest we have seen since all of this started, 4 o'clock. And we're going to have to see if all of these people leave. And just because police have the ability to arrest people for defying the curfew doesn't mean that they will.
That shot right there. One of the police officers.
Chris is.
Was hugging.
Yeah, we saw people hugging a couple minutes ago. This is by no means. It looked like it might have been heated discussion, but I don't think it was tense in the way of protesters arguing with police or vice versa. I think they were actually coming to some common ground in their discussion there. But Desmond, you know, I wonder if we are going to see them move people out at 4 o'clock. We didn't see that when the curfew set in Los Angeles yesterday, in terms of the minute that happened, that police started moving people out. It's just, I suppose, giving them the leeway. I don't know. What do you think from where you can see? You have a better handle on how many people are out there.
Yeah, I think that the situation is still so chaotic with looters going in and out of stores that's probably going to have to be the priority for Santa Monica police, and just to make sure that other stores are not being broken into. I would have to think that that's going to be the priority over protesters, if protesters are simply sitting here peacefully in the street or gathering. It's going to be very difficult with Santa Monica police spread so thin across so many areas in downtown, especially with the looting continuing. And like I was saying earlier, as soon as they manage to secure one building, we hear about stores being broken into just a couple of blocks down the street.
Yeah, police officers really are having to deal with two different situations happening at once. They're trying to make sure that protesters are safe and that people who are, you know, driving by or walking by are safe. And then they're also having to deal with some of the things that are happening. It looks like we're actually seeing some movement now, people running down the street. Do we know what happened there? I know you just panned the camera over.
Yeah, I just came over to look here, and it looks like here you see Santa Monica police now. They are firing tear gas into the crowd. They are trying to disperse this crowd, and that may have been what the protesters were talking with the police on the other side when we saw them getting into their face. Maybe they were saying, you know, please don't do this, don't make us disperse. But you can see that is what Santa Monica PD is doing now at this point as they move forward with tear gas. And once again, this crowd is beginning to scatter. We're now just south of the 10 freeway, going south on Ocean Avenue. Now again, they just did this about 20 minutes ago, and then the crowd reassembled, so we're just going to have to see what happens with this situation.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because in a little more than 20 minutes, their curfew will start in Santa Monica. And as Lori told us, they're actually, they want to prohibit people from getting into the city of Santa Monica. They're shutting down off-ramps in that area to make sure.
Tina Patel mentioned that.
Oh, yeah. Tina Patel, yeah, to make sure that people don't get in that area. But, you know, when we were watching the protesters speak with police, and, you know, we did see some hugs and we did see some conversation. And basically, you know, the moral of the story is conversation needs to be out there from both sides. And just seeing images like that is very powerful to see, because conversation and communication is everything, especially in situations like this.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we saw so many protests yesterday across the nation. I believe in New Jersey, police officers were actually marching, or Flint, I should say, Flint. Police officers were actually marching with some of the protesters in New Jersey. There was dancing in the streets. There's so many things happening at once here, and we want to make sure that we pay attention to all of these things as best we can all at once and give you the proper context as to what's happening here. But for a moment there, it looked like the police officers were trying to give some commands to people to push back, and we just see some conversations happening back and forth. Nothing crazy right now, just talking basically what Chris mentioned. But you know, there is such a stark contrast between what we see from minute to minute and block to block. Even on the same block, we see a line of officers, that skirmish line, deploying the gas, pushing people back, trying to get them to leave. Here, they're just talking in a crowd. You know, Desmond, even in the same city and the same block, so many different things are happening at once. All right, we're going to get Desmond back here in just a moment, but this is a different helicopter
and
shot
where is this at right now? Let's ask our producer.
This is Santa Monica.
Okay.
So not far from that earlier shot that we had. But we're going to try and get Desmond back here in just a moment. But that's one of the challenges of covering this, is that even in the same city, the same
It's hard to
chopper
tell.
shot, even so many things can be happening at once. You can have one group that's totally calm, having an open dialogue. Of course, we really can't speculate as to what they're saying because we're above. We do have reporters on the ground, and we do have reporters, going into the crowds of demonstrators and asking them, what their thoughts are. It looks like people have their hands up now and they're getting on the ground. We don't know if this is at the instruction of police or part of the demonstration. We're not sure.
Oftentimes they're, hands up, don't shoot, part of their protest. But also there was a protest in Huntington Beach that we were covering as well. They've actually declared unlawful assembly in that area. There were hundreds of people out there as well. And they were trying to get people to leave that area. We're still trying to figure out the details of what exactly is going on in Huntington Beach right now. We do know in downtown Los Angeles, we saw some shots there of people going through the streets there, and then Santa Monica as well. And it looks like, let's talk to Desmond. It looks like the people have cleared from the streets, and now they're on the side. Desmond, what are you seeing now?
Yeah, it seems like maybe Santa Monica police are just trying to get people out of the street because they're letting these people stay here. They're not firing tear gas or even, trying to get them to disperse. They're kind of in the Palisades Park area. That's on Ocean Avenue just to the north. And there you saw LAPD's, one of their choppers overhead.
All right, we're going to try and get that signal back from Desmond. But in the meantime, we do have our Greg Mills. We're covering protests on multiple fronts. Some of them are happening in Los Angeles County. Some are happening in Orange County. And I just want to make sure that we're not missing something here. We're seeing people running off. Our producers are asking us to stick with this here. So it's hard to tell. Sometimes we see people running, and that can happen for different reasons, whether people are being told to disperse or there is some kind of other activity, whether people are running in stores or out of them. We just don't know.
That's what we've been seeing. We have ground crews. It's hard to tell with the trees that are here, but there's several stores inside there where people are going in and running out with different items, basically stealing them. I know the Vans store was hit pretty hard. We were right in front of there. The Nike store as well, REI. And what's so heartbreaking to see is the majority of these people are kids of all races and ethnicities, and just a whole bunch of kids running in and out, young people breaking into these stores. Obviously, it's disheartening to see something like this, but
there have been images across the country and in our area of business owners standing outside their shops, standing guard,
trying to protect it,
and trying to protect their store. But police in different situations have advised people, not to get in the middle of situations like this. We'll see what the guidance is here once we ask them or we get them on the record about that. They don't want to see people get hurt, especially, over property, although that's devastating for a business owner to be looted, no doubt. They just want to make sure that people's lives remain intact throughout all of this. But yeah, so a lot of running down here. This is around the corner from Target, I believe. Chris, you were talking about the fact that some of these businesses have been boarded up in anticipation of the possibility that things get a little bit heated. Again, this is not part of the protest from what we can tell. This is a different area, and police are trying to deal with multiple situations at once. Now, this looks like a large gathering of people that might be part of the protest, and that standoff there where we see that line of officers, a tactic that we've seen used yesterday, the day before, and in different cities across the country. Whether that be the officers are just trying to keep space, keep people from converging or keep them out of the intersection. We don't really know here, but it looks like there are a couple of them on bikes, on foot there, and some cruisers parked there and a group of people on the other side. And I do want to mention what you see there on the bottom of your screen. Artina Patel had reported the fact that police made the decision to close some of the off-ramps coming into Santa Monica. So I imagine off the 10 freeway there. I'm sorry, this is Huntington now. We just want to clarify. So, we're going back and forth from shot to shot. So that previous shot was Santa Monica. This is now Huntington, probably Main Street. Is that right? I'm asking the control room just to make sure. Protesters were on Main Street before. I know there's Greg Mills is in Huntington for us. He's been covering these protests for hours and posting on social media. Greg, I'm not sure if you can hear me or we're able to go to him now on the ground. Greg, I've been following you on social media. You've been out there for hours now. How has the dynamic changed in the last hour, would you say?
Well, Sarah, as you can see, very, very calm here now. There were about 500 people here. That's our estimate, maybe more. And they were on both sides of PCH. And boy, were they split. When they got together, there was some skirmishes there, a lot of screaming and yelling. They definitely were not on the same page. Police were able to declare, as Chris mentioned earlier, unlawful assembly, which essentially says you're breaking the law, you got to get out. And so they were able to move all the people out again. About 500 people were here. We saw believe 4 people arrested, 3 women and 1 man, and otherwise, other than some skirmishes, nothing bad. No looting is what police said. I want to show you a few things here live. I know we've been showing you some video from the Sky 2 and Sky 9, but come back down to the ground level and you see that people are taking preemptive actions. First of all, along PCH, that subway and another building right to the right that sells ice cream of some sort, they are both boarded up. And then right down Main Street, we're at Pacific Coast Highway and Main Street, and you see they're taking essentially, I think, preemptive action, hoping nothing happens here on Main Street tonight, blocking it off, as you can see, with police cars. You might recall, I believe it was July 4th, a few years ago, there was some looting on Main Street, which really surprised people. They broke into a bicycle shop and looted that, took all kinds of bicycles, and people were really shocked by that happening. Now, you got looting in other cities, Los Angeles, Santa Monica, but here, police said, so far, nothing. We got here today, and the very first thing that caught our attention was right over here at Duke's. Duke's has been here for many, many years, an institution here in Huntington Beach, and they were putting the boards up that you see right there and closing on a day that they normally, in the past, pre-pandemic, would have been packed. And the beach, what a difference. Sarah and Chris, you look down there, and it's like they're in a different world. They're about 100 yards away, 200 yards away, different world from what was like this 2 hours ago when people were being arrested and there were skirmishes and everything else going on here. But what police did was, once they declared the unlawful assembly, they then started systematically moving. They spread out across the whole, this area right here from that side of PCH, this side, in fact, all the way down to the pier, and just would move. They'd stand for about 10 minutes, move the crowd back again, about 10 yards, 15 yards, and they did it very systematically. It took about an hour, but that crowd of about 500 people who were on PCH and on both sides, they were then they just gave up and kind of went away. Some went to the boardwalk, continued the protest there, maybe 20 of them did that, but otherwise they just kind of cooperated and ended up dispersing and heading home. But right now, this protest that started at noon is long gone, and I don't see anybody here right now that was here earlier for the protest, but they want to get the point across that the Black Lives do matter. That was the key, and a number of people I talked to said they think what they're doing now this weekend will make a difference. So Chris and Sarah, we'll see.
Yeah, that's what we want to see. Greg, thank you for updating us. Greg's out in Huntington Beach for one of the Black Lives Matter protests. The other two that we're following one in downtown Los Angeles, another one in Santa Monica. In Santa Monica, their curfew is expected to hit in the next 14 minutes. It is 3:46 at 4 p.m. A curfew will be in effect in Santa Monica. We have Desmond Shaw live over Sky 2, Sky 9. Desmond, what does it look like right now?
Well, Chris and Sarah, I'm noticing a particularly large contingency now of Santa Monica police that have assembled here. They may just be waiting until 4 o'clock to begin to arrest people at this point. Now, twice we've watched them fire tear gas into the crowd. Twice the crowd is dispersed, and twice the crowd has reassembled. So this is on Ocean Avenue, now just south of the Santa Monica Pier. And a very defiant group here, and that may be their goal, as we've seen with some of the protesters, is to wait until the curfew, and then they'll sit down, and they're being peaceful but defiant, and waiting to be taken into custody, perhaps to make a statement. So that's that group of protesters. The other group of protesters has gotten out of the street. You see them in Palisades Park here, just north of the pier, along Ocean Avenue. Earlier, we saw some words being exchanged with protesters and the police. And for a moment, it looked heated, but then we saw maybe even some hugs being exchanged. And so now that they're out of the street, it seems that they're okay for now. But again, if the curfew going into effect shortly, we may begin to see arrests here soon as well.
Desmond, I want to ask you, you don't stay in one area. The nature of your job is you're stationed at an airport in the Valley, and then you fly all over the Los Angeles area. You really have an interesting vantage point of all of LA when you do your job throughout the day, whether or not something is going on like this. There have been a lot of questions about the National Guard and where they've been staged and what they're going to be used for, if anything. We've seen them working with LASD in different parts of the city, including in the downtown area. I wonder, have you personally seen them from the helicopter, whether that be here or any other parts of LA?
I've only seen them stationed over by the LA Convention Center. I saw tents there and a lot of vehicles, a lot of personnel walking around. because obviously downtown was the first area of concern when things initially got really heated on Friday night. But then, we also saw, obviously, last night in Mid-City where things really got out of control, and now in Santa Monica. So it's kind of moved to the west now, as the days have progressed. So now we just have so many areas where, there's definitely a demand, really a need for the National Guard. It's unclear what their plan is or where they're going to fan out. But I would assume that as these curfews start to get into place, and certainly as the sun begins to fall, and after 8 o'clock tonight when the curfew goes into effect in the city of Los Angeles, we should begin to see them fan out across the LA basin.
Yeah, it's so bizarre to hear a curfew 2 nights in a row. I know Sarah and I were on the anchor desk yesterday, observing and watching everything that was going on with the last protest. And, we asked the mayor and a retired police sergeant when the last time they saw a curfew like this was, and that was back in 1992 for the Rodney King acquittal. 28 years ago, and here we are in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, which it's hard to believe we're still in a pandemic after watching these images. But a 4 o'clock curfew in Santa Monica on a Sunday sunny afternoon in Southern California.
Yeah, really
bizarre.
Yeah, sort of surreal to see. And Desmond, I want you to hang with us. We were talking about this a little while ago. Just because this curfew is in place doesn't necessarily mean they're going to start arresting people at 4 o'clock on the dot. Obviously, that means they have the ability to do that. But most of these police officers have, been told in Los Angeles, the mayor of Los Angeles, but other city and county officials, they don't want to have any of these heated confrontations. They want to try and de-escalate the situation in many cases. I'm not sure what kind of training Santa Monica Police has received or what their direct instructions are, but obviously, everybody wants to avoid conflict here, with some exceptions where we saw some of that lawlessness last night, and items being thrown at police, which nobody wants to see that, including some injuries. But we're going to see whether or not they opt for that, whether or not they wait until 4 o'clock, which is only 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes from now. And we're going to see whether or not they, on the dot start trying to take people off. Remember what a logistical challenge it was trying to arrest so many people. Hundreds of people arrested last night. I don't believe as many people were arrested last night as were arrested in the downtown protest a couple evenings ago, but still hundreds of people, and many of them were out on the streets arrested in zip ties, waiting for transport, waiting for somewhere to go, waiting for a vehicle large enough to take them in. So, when you think about that, when you think about the challenges that police, face in doing that, I can't imagine that the first thing that they're going to do is start arresting every single person that's standing there. But their goal that they've communicated to us is that they want to get people off the streets and into their homes. Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, you talk about this curfew being at 8 p.m. The resources are spread thin as well. And Sarah, I was on my way home last night, and probably close to midnight, there were still several people breaking into businesses, several people, going into these stores and looting, and law enforcement was dispersed throughout that area. LA Fire Department, they were, trying to put out fires at nearby businesses. So the curfew is there, but of course the resources are thin, and it'll be interesting to see where the guardsmen go. There's 500 guardsmen that just arrived here early this morning. I believe they're staying at the convention center for now, but they are ready to go at any moment. So
and other parts of the city, I think, not just there, they were staged in different places. And they're in communication with the Sheriff's Department and with LAPD. I think those are the two primary agencies they've been dealing with. But, and that's another thing. We don't know if they will be used. We don't know if we're going to see a night like we saw last night, or maybe something that's a lot calmer. These curfews are in place earlier than they were this time of day yesterday. So I think part of the thinking behind that is they want to be proactive and try and keep people off the streets as much as possible. But, they have to walk that fine line, and people have their First Amendment rights. The mayor of LA has talked about that. He's been an advocate of demonstrations in the past, at least, and he's talked about that with the media quite openly.
Let's see if we have a live shot of our helicopter. Is this the downtown location? Do we have the downtown LA live shot still?
All right, so we're working on that. Remember, we're trying to cover multiple protests from our helicopters and from the ground, and we're going to try and spread our crews out as best we can. But you can see this line of police now in Santa Monica. The curfew is going into effect in about 8 minutes from now. That doesn't mean, like we've said, that we're going to see immediate action on the ground there of them trying to clear the crowds out. But they are asking people to just willingly, by their own accord, obey the curfew and go home. in Santa Monica. In Los Angeles, the curfew's a little bit later. It's 8 o'clock. And one of the things that we've been talking about the last couple of days is, the effect that this has had on local business owners who are just now getting the green light to reopen in many cases,
Right, yeah.
who have not had income coming in some cases for months on end. And these curfews probably will have some effect on them as well. The mayor has said it's okay for people to be coming and going from work, or if you need to attend to an emergency, you still, of course, have the ability to do that in spite of the curfew. But this probably will affect businesses in some way or another who may not be comfortable or may not be able to continue to operate post-curfew.
Yeah, and this crowd that we're seeing right now is much smaller than we saw earlier. So it appears several people have left, but there's also a lot of people here who are standing their ground, and kind of a face-off with Santa Monica police right there. But as you were talking about these small business owners, I was walking up and down Melrose today, and just to see all the destruction this morning and the vandalism and the stores that are bashed in. And
there were a few people out there that I saw in videos, and you probably saw too, who were taking pictures, people who may have driven in from other parts of town or
Right,
from down
yeah.
the street, just looking
In
at
awe.
it and witnessing it in
Yeah.
awe and taking pictures, because so many people were watching the news last night and seeing what was happening. We want to go to Huntington Beach if we can. It looks like police there may be starting to move in on protesters just a little bit who are standing in the street. They're there with their hands up. Police there on the opposite side, as you can tell. And it looks like they may trying to push them back here. They're asking that woman to get up off the street, or man, I'm not sure. And they're walking back now. So, we'll have to see how this plays out. Of course, we hope it plays out peacefully and that nobody gets hurt.
And another situation, this area in Huntington Beach had over 500 protesters out there. Obviously, it's a lot smaller, but it's kind of similar to what we're seeing in Santa Monica. And, all across the country, Sarah, just watching social media and watching different news outlets, these protests are happening everywhere, even in the smaller cities. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there have been videos circulating about Huntington Beach and maybe the possibility of some counter protesters out there. We're not sure whether or not there were any incidents in relation to that. We're trying to gather that information for you now. And remember, a lot of times we rely on police departments to give us the data about the number of injuries, the number of arrests. So, we're not getting that information in real time because everything is changing so quickly. They're trying to gather that information for us. Typically, we get it the next day. So a lot of people have been curious about how many people may have been injured, whether officers were injured, what the nature of their injuries were. We rely on those updates from city officials like mayors and whatnot, council members, and police departments who are sharing that information in real time with each other and then disseminating that to us. So we're waiting on that as well. Certainly hoping that nobody is hurt in all of this, protesters or police. Everybody wants a peaceful end to this, and I think that's why you've seen city officials calling on so many community leaders, faith leaders, people who have advocated for social justice issues. They're asking them to communicate a message of peace to people because everybody wants the situation to be de-escalated. Nobody wants to see injuries on day 1, day 2, day 4, or day 40.
Ever, yeah.
Yeah, so we're keeping an eye here on these two protest situations, one in Santa Monica and one in Huntington Beach.
And in Santa Monica, in 4 minutes, there will be a curfew in the city of Santa Monica. They are blocking off entrances, the exit ramps, so nobody will enter that city. We're trying to get a hold of someone from the city of Santa Monica, either the mayor or someone from Santa Monica Police, to talk a little bit about this curfew, the importance of this curfew, and most importantly, how they're going to enforce it. As you know, there's a lot of people who live in this area
who are not participating in this and who also have questions about what they can or cannot do. And
Exactly.
I just want to mention, if those off-ramps are shut down, that means that there's going to be sort of a traffic consideration for people if they are coming back home into Santa Monica from other parts of the city. Maybe you work downtown or you work in another part of LA and you're coming back into Santa Monica. Those off-ramps, we're told, are being closed, so you're going to have to find alternate routes to get back to your homes if that is what you're doing, namely surface streets into the city. So we do want to let people know about that, because that is something that is going to affect this area even beyond just this protest site here in Santa Monica.
And we actually want to go back to the ground. Tina Patel, she's live on the ground. Tina, what does it look? Where are you at right now, and what does it look like? Describe your situation.
Yeah, so we are on Ocean Avenue, just north of the Santa Monica Pier, and you can see that this is one of the groups that was kind of involved in that more peaceful protest here in Santa Monica. Now, from what we're seeing, you can see that they're all kind of kneeling down in front of the police, and we've seen this a couple times throughout the day with this group, where they kind of kneel in front of the police, and at one point they were saying, "Kneel with us, march with us." This group seems to be okay. If we pan over to the left, you can see that's where the line of officers is. And then farther down, basically on the other side of the pier, it looks like there is another group of protesters there. And from what we're hearing, that's where at one point the crowd kind of got a little bit out of control, and police put tear gas into that crowd to disperse it. It seems like from what we can see from our distance that there is now still another crowd over here, but then this is a separate crowd. And I don't know if they were kind of all in one at one point and the police separated them, or if they were two different groups. What we can tell you is we've been talking about this curfew. That is supposed to go into effect in just a few minutes. So although right now everybody's kind of standing and keeping watch of the police and the officers, the question is when that curfew goes into effect is, will they actually try to forcibly remove people from the street, or will they let them kind of be here and just try to disperse them? So that's why we're kind of standing by and watching. Right now it feels like everybody is just sort of chanting, but not really inciting or kind of throwing anything or doing anything like that. Now, I also want to set the scene because what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, we were a few blocks away, and that is where a completely separate group of people have been breaking into stores. We've been witnessing some looting, and a lot of the people here say they have nothing to do with that group and didn't even know that that was going on a few blocks away, that this is what they've been trying to do, get their message across to police throughout the day, and that they're a separate group from the ones that have been breaking into stores. But again, one of the reasons that the curfew is now set at 4 p.m. is because of what we saw on just the other side of town where more of the businesses are. So now that the curfew is coming, we'll see what happens with this crowd.
All right, Tina, hang tight for just a second. I just want to let our viewers know the video you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen, members of the National Guard staging in the Mid-City area in Los Angeles. These are live pictures right now. For now, it looks like they're just hanging out. And I do want to keep Tina with us because I want to ask her a couple questions, but that's what these pictures are right here. So that's happening in Mid-City. Now, Tina, back to you really quickly. I just want to ask you, I know as part of your reporting, you've been trying to talk to individual demonstrators and protesters to see what their message has been. It sounds like they're chanting Black Lives Matter. What are some of the stories you've heard from people, why they're out there, what their message is, what they want to put out there in the public?
You know, I mean, a lot of them just say that they are fed up with what they've been seeing with police violence, not only in Minneapolis, but other cases. And a lot of them, there's a very mixed crowd of races. I think if you can look, I mean, there really are kind of all ages. We've seen families here. We've seen people from all areas of the valley. We saw some people from Bel Air. Like there was a very mixed group here. And they say they are just tired and feeling like they didn't feel like there was anything they could do. So they thought, well, maybe this is something we can do. At least maybe we can add our voice to the chorus of people saying that we need real change in this country. And unfortunately, they're very disturbed by what they saw, which is a separate group of people that were breaking into stores, that were looting, that were taking advantage of what they're trying to do and really, you know, making kind of the movement a little more violent than it needs to be. They are really trying to keep the focus on the police violence and the changes that we need to see. And they say that group that's doing the other kinds of things that we've been seeing over the last few days are really getting in the way of the message that they're trying to promote.
I mean, Tina, what we saw you do earlier, you've been moving around Santa Monica a little bit, a couple blocks here, a couple blocks there, and when you were covering that looting earlier, it looked like cars were pulling up. It didn't even look like they were part of that group. Is that right?
Yeah, from what we saw when we were over by the stores, there was a number of cars that kind of stopped in the middle of the street. People ran out, were running into the stores, getting things, and then running back out and driving off. And so what we were seeing is that it seems like people were coming out of the area, coming in and doing that. That's part of the reason that we said that there is a curfew now at 4 o'clock, and it's also why the city closed the off-ramps to Santa Monica, trying to limit the people coming in. Now, as we said, a lot of these people came earlier in the day. These protests started at noon, so there were a lot of people that did come from out of the area to be part of this demonstration, and that's what we're curious is as this curfew is coming, getting all of these people who don't live in the area to now peacefully and kind of calmly exit the area. I think that's going to be a tough job for the police officers, but we'll see how it goes. You can see that the officers are all kind of lined up, and it's past 4 now. There hasn't been any movement. but they are definitely keeping an eye on this crowd, trying to make sure that nothing changes with this area.
All right, thank you so much, Tina Patel. Let's now go to Desmond Shaw up above in Sky 2 and Sky 9. And Desmond, I know where Tina was, there were a handful of protesters in that area. You've been covering some of the crime, some of the looting that's going on, which is not correlating with what the protesters are doing. What do you see now? Are the majority of the people that are there, are they protesting? Is that where Tina was?
Yeah, that's everything that I've just been looking at the protesters recently. We haven't. It sounds like maybe the police department was getting a handle on some of the widespread looting that we saw along Santa Monica and 4th Street and at Santa Monica Place. So we've been watching this contingency of the police department. And now that it's after 4 o'clock, we're just waiting to see what they're going to do at this point. If they're going to march south and start taking people into custody, if they're really going to, if they're going to fire more tear gas to get this crowd to disperse. It's unclear what they're going to do at this point, but it is now past curfew, and these people are all in violation of the law and subject to arrest. And the Santa Monica PD already tried to get them to disperse once, actually twice before, and then twice more they had gathered. And that goes double for this group as well. They've actually kind of started to spill back into the street. You can see them all sitting down. So, this indicates that a lot of them are willing to be arrested. I know some protesters kind of, wear that as a badge of pride to be taken into custody in defiance in this way. So it's past 4 o'clock, waiting to see what exactly Santa Monica police are going to do about this situation on Ocean Avenue on either side of the Santa Monica Pier.
Desmond, I know you spend a lot of time covering traffic, and you know your way around LA as well as anybody I know. Can you talk a little bit for people who may not be participating in this but need to be aware of some of the street closures? Obviously, curfew's in effect now, but there are people who are coming home from wherever they may be, and that includes work. Can you talk a little bit about where they may find hiccups traffic-wise, what closures you see in place, whether that be with police or protesters or what have you?
Yeah, as I gaze over to the Santa Monica Freeway, actually the westbound side of the 10, they are shutting down the off-ramps that come into downtown Santa Monica. It looks like the 4th and 5th Street ramps are definitely closed, and the Lincoln off-ramp is closed as well. I don't want to take the focus off of the protesters yet, but I can just tell you, as I look at that, the westbound 10 is backing up. And southbound Pacific Coast Highway, where it transitions to the eastbound 10, is also starting to get congested. So those are the only closures I'm seeing right now. I can just verify that the westbound 10 off-ramps getting into Santa Monica. It looks like you could exit at Cloverfield. That's basically kind of the city limit between West Los Angeles and Santa Monica. Actually, they may be shutting that one down as well. So definitely getting complicated for people that are trying to get home. But the surface streets themselves are open streets like California, Santa Monica, Wilshire. The California Incline appears to be open. I'm seeing people coming off of southbound PCH and coming up onto Wilshire Boulevard to get into the city that way.
All right, I want to see if the producer can just for 1 second bring back, and the director can bring back that graphic that we had up there for you. We do want to let you know about some important information that we're getting from different cities about curfews as we look at these live pictures.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at a tweet from Supervisor Janice Hahn with LA County. She says a countywide curfew will be in place starting at 6 p.m., lasting through 6 a.m. So that changes. Originally it was 8 p.m. Now we're hearing 6 p.m. saying.
And countywide. That's
county, yeah, County of Los Angeles. Residents should remain in their homes, only go out to seek medical care or to go to an essential job.
So that is a large piece of news. Los Angeles County
from 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock
is massive. It extends incredibly far, north, west, south, and east. So that includes multiple cities that are not part of the city of Los Angeles. So that is some breaking news that we're going to try and get that running up on our screen here too. So that county curfew in effect for 6 o'clock. So I imagine that will supersede the 8 o'clock curfew in the city of Los Angeles. We'll have to ask them for clarification about that.
Which is, it's bizarre. As we've been talking about, this is a developing story, and as the minutes go on, things change. Yesterday at this time, Mayor Garcetti said we are not asking for the National Guard to come.
And he
2 hours later,
he was asked for clarification as to why he made that statement and then suddenly turned around. And his response was that things escalated. Let's go back down on the ground to Tina Patel outside a demonstration in Santa Monica. Tina, what are we seeing?
Yeah, as we said, the curfew started at 4 o'clock. You can still see that there's still a number of people here I was talking to one of the people who's kind of an organizer of this group, and I said, are you planning on dispersing now that there is a curfew? And he said no, and the reason he explained to me, the reason that he doesn't want to leave is because he feels that it's a little bit unfair that the crowd was allowed to gather here, that all of a sudden there was a curfew that was enacted, and that the people here didn't have a chance to react. He says what he saw yesterday is that cops started blocking people in and then immediately arresting them when that curfew went. And he said that he didn't really feel like that was the way that police should be dealing with the public that are involved in a peaceful protest. So that's why none of these people right now apparently are voluntarily leaving, even though there is a curfew in effect. And again, right now what we're seeing is the police are just sort of standing there. I don't know if you can kind of see that there are a few of them that do have zip ties now hooked kind of on their belts. So it does appear if they do want to start taking people into custody, that may be how they do it. But right now, even though we have passed that 4 o'clock hour, we have not seen any of that. But again, just in the last few minutes, a lot of people were sitting down, kind of being peaceful. They're all on their feet now, chanting. And right now, the police have not reacted at all, but they are definitely keeping watch on this crowd.
Okay, Tina, it's hard to tell, but it sounds like we have some demonstrators there on bullhorns. Have you heard the police give any verbal instructions for people to move on? I know you mentioned they're just standing around. We can't always hear what they're saying down there. Have you heard that yet?
No, actually, every time I kind of hear a bullhorn, I turn around to see if they are saying anything. And right now, I have not seen them kind of give any notice to the crowd and even say anything. And because you and I, we've been talking while we've been on the air, there was not a curfew until just a few hours ago. So it's very possible that a number of the people that came and were if you look down the street, actually, it looks like there's another group that's south of the pier, and it looks like there is tear gas being used to disperse that crowd. We're not seeing anything on the crowd that we're in, which is north of the pier, but this is all along Ocean Boulevard. We can see the smoke coming up from where we are, and that is the same group where police used tear gas earlier to try to disperse the crowd, but then they regathered. It's hard to see from where we are if the crowd is dispersing now with that gas, but we can just see the smoke from where we are down the street.
Wow, yeah, a lot happening there, and it's hard to tell if they're running far away from the intersection, or they're pushing back or regathering in another part of the street there. I don't know, Tina, if you can tell from where you're standing, but are officers actually moving in addition to deploying the tear gas? Are they physically pushing in to get people out?
You know what? It's very hard to tell what's happening with that group, because from what we see, we just see a line of officers kind of facing that direction. And so it's hard to tell where the tear gas is coming and how it's being shot at that crowd. What we're saying is that this group that's just over on this side, we're not seeing any action from the police. We haven't heard any commands from them telling them to disperse. We imagined that there would be some verbal commands before there was anything like tear gas used, but we haven't been hearing anything from the police towards this crowd, even though they've been kind of standing face to face here for quite some time now.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of those people have been out there for hours, and I'm not sure whether or not they've gotten the alerts about the curfew. It's possible that some haven't been informed about it, but some probably do know about it, considering the fact that it's been widely shared on social media now, and everybody has their phone out nowadays. But we're going to have to see what happens here, Tina. We are going to stick with your shot, so I do want to let you know that because we're trying to figure out what's going on here and make sure that everything happens peacefully and nobody gets hurt. But it's so interesting to see how calm the officers are on this side of the shot and the situation on the other side. Officers are still calm on that side of the skirmish line, but obviously a lot more going on over there. And for people who are watching, our crews have been given leeway. We don't want to put our team in danger. We had a reporter who got tear gas, Lori Perez, yesterday, by happenstance. She was, in the wrong place at the wrong time, so to speak. So, we want to make sure that Tina is empowered to make decisions on the ground about where she can stand safely. Chris and I have been out in the field, and sometimes even from our vantage point in the television studio, it looks like everything's okay, and things may feel very different when they're on the ground. So,
sure.
Tina knows that. She has the ability to stand where she needs to stand so she can be safe.
And that shot that you saw on the right, that picture, that was out in Mid-City. The National Guardsmen, they are here. They are ready to deploy wherever they need to be. Obviously, Santa Monica, we've got some protests going on there. It seems like things are pretty civil right now. Obviously, there is a curfew, and law enforcement wants people to leave. But at the same time, things haven't been out of control, at least with this group. Earlier,
is that
obviously.
Pico now in Mid-City, that shot on the right?
Oh, it looks like they're moving.
Is that, okay, it might be, but it looks like the National Guardsmen are on the move there, and we're going to try and get a locator for you. I apologize. We have so many shots going up at one time, but it's possible. Let's see. Trying to see where they're crossing over now, but it looks like that could be Pico.
It's hard to tell. So either they're heading to Santa Monica or they're heading to downtown Los Angeles.
Or they may be heading somewhere else. We're really not sure.
Or maybe somewhere else, yeah.
We're relying on the Sheriff's Department and the City Police Department, LAPD, to give us information, because it seems like for now those are the two agencies that are coordinating with the National Guard. They're kind of taking instructions from them, and you see people standing out there kind of looking at the spectacle of all of this. Obviously, not a normal sight of the streets of Los Angeles to see members of the National Guard deployed for something like this, or for any reason for that matter. So, you know, I've seen people online sharing videos on social media of this just because of the fact that it's just a surreal sight to see here. We're going to try and get a cross street for you or get a locator. I apologize. Please bear with us here as we try and cover, you know, protests and movement all across Los Angeles in different areas, and in Orange County as well.
Yeah, it is bizarre to see this in the city of Los Angeles.
Hey guys,
I mean, especially,
would you be willing to talk?
especially considering this is day 5. The protests started getting a little bit more out of control starting on Friday. It's interesting to see that the National Guard is here. There's 500 members that are here to help out if things get out of control. Hopefully that's not the situation. And you know, it's also pretty interesting that Santa Monica has that 4 p.m. curfew, and then LA County has that 6 p.m. curfew. So, I mean, less than 2 hours, LA County people are asked to stay home. And I think you were right. I think this is Pico and maybe, let's see.
We're working on it.
One of our assignment desk people is saying it's Cochran, Pico and Cochran.
Okay, so it looked like they were traveling down Pico. It's kind of hard to tell, and I'm not sure whether or not we can communicate that, but looks like it's Pico, actually. You know, Tina's still on the ground in Santa Monica. Tina, I understand you have one of the organizers there with you. Let's go to you now.
Yeah, guys, we're here with Marcus. Hey, Marcus. He's trying to keep people out of the street, and that's why he's talking. Hey, Marcus, can we talk to you real quickly?
Oh, it does.
So I'm sorry, if you want to flip around here. We were talking to Marcus, who's with this group that's on Ocean Avenue. They've been demonstrating all day. You were just telling me when we were talking about the people that are just a few blocks away breaking into stores, looting. What do you have to say about that? Because you want people to know that is a separate group than yours.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're out here to show a couple things. All lives matter, Black lives matter, and police brutality is a thing. They've been given too much power, and we just really want to bring attention to that. So with that going on, we've had protests all across America, and you got about three different groups. One being the organizers of the protests, and then you have kind of like an extremist group that their main objective is to set a narrative that is not really, it doesn't really comply with the protesters. And then you have the third one, which is the people that break in and they loot places that they're not supposed to be looting. And
so how frustrating is when you're trying to get this message across and you see
something? It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. We're all frustrated, and that just adds on another complex just thing on life, and how, like, that's our struggle. That's our constant struggle, and we have to meet that together. And just as I told you off air, you know, if it's all new to us. Doing, you know, like, you've had a women's march, you've had a 1 million man march, you've had all these marches before, but you never really had a march like this where all races join together for a few causes that really will benefit the world. You know, we're America. We set a precedence around the world, and the more that we come together, you know, and really let people know that we're adults. We can choose the life that we want. You know.
You were just saying to me though,
peacefully.
You don't think that police notice the difference between what you're doing and what's happening.
Could you say that again?
You were just saying that police, you don't think, recognize the difference between this group and the other group.
I don't think they do, and and the only way for them to see that would be if we all join together. I'm thinking we'll do a protest where we just form a line around buildings, unified together, so that they know we're here to protect this community and so that it can flourish, so that we all flourish in life. And if any of those looters come, that's not even for the community, if they decide to come, they'll have to go through us. We're unified, you know what I mean? And then that's when the cops will know. And we say, hey, he's not with us, he's got to go. Hey, he's got to go. You know what I mean? That's how we join together. And I thank you for asking all these questions, because it's been heavy on my heart with everything that went on yesterday. I was there, it was a peaceful, beautiful protest, but nobody got to see that because other parties joined and set a narrative that wasn't a part of what we were trying to do, and we still continued on. We went on, and we did what we could with it. It's a learning lesson, you know, and I just hope the best for all of us. Thank you. Thank you.
What Marcus was saying is what we've been hearing from a lot of people, is that there is a message that's trying to get across today, and unfortunately there is another group of people that are really messing that message up, not just here in Southern California, but around the country. Again, that is why police are now here keeping a line and saying that they're going to have a curfew, is because of what other groups have done. We'll have to see how it goes as the day goes on. Right now, farther down the street on Ocean Boulevard, it seems like police have used tear gas to start to disperse the crowd. But for now, the officers are letting these folks still stay here, still in the street. We have not heard anything from them about whether they plan to make this group disperse or not, but we're going to stay here and continue to watch the situation.